Yo. All right, what's up, guys? It is Friday, January the 31st, and we are officially through the first month of the year. Just got through an exciting weekend. Had UFC 311 recently, had Karate Combat KC 52 recently, or was it 51? Well, it was one of them. That shows you how fried my brain is right now. But quick spot check. And I know we have so it was KC52. We just had Rendon Screevers. It was our first time live streaming over on OmniFlix TV with Scott and Bella from the podcast. Nice little surprise. Right leading up to it, OmniFlix was able to enable the chat. So, you those guys have been live with OmniFlix where you could upload videos for the last year, but the live streaming is currently under pressure testing, and even the chat was not available until the night of the KC52 event. So, happy to kick off the new year and excited to see what 2025 will bring us. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is Fight Farm. Was writing out an overview today for someone to potentially send them upon request. And while I was doing that, I said, I'm going to take and just kind of like read through this and make sure that people have a good understanding of what Fight Farm is. So let me go ahead. I'm going to switch over to my browser view. And then once I get over there, I will, let's see. There we go. It's got the nice little browser. Hope everyone did good on the karate game. It's my first time actually playing, so I've been scooping up karate for a little bit now, but I hadn't actually set it up on the website and played, so that was fun for the first time. Definitely a fun experience. I urge you, if you have not tried it out yet, go to karate.com. If you don't have the karate token, you can easily get it by getting H bar for Hedera over on your local centralized exchange. Coinbase has it if you're in the US. It's really easy to send H bar. You can set up a hashpack wallet. If you don't know what that is, go to X, Twitter, and look up hashpack. I believe their website or their name might be Hashpack App. That's a really good Hedera Hashgraph wallet. All you have to do is buy some HBAR, send it over to your Hashpack app, connect to Saucer Swap, and Saucer Swap, you'll be able to swap from HBAR over to Karate. Leading into KC53 in February, you will be able to put some of that karate tokens on different fighters that you're choosing to win. The sweet thing about it is you can't lose, right? But if you predict correctly, you can earn some more karate tokens. Really, really fun aspect of the game, and I'm sure that's one of the easiest ways to kind of recruit people and get them involved. So, if you ever have questions on it, feel free to hit me up, and I'll be more than happy to help guide you through and give you any steps or hints that you may be missing. For the most part, Hedera feels just like any other blockchain that you would be on as far as the wallet, how you send and receive transactions. There are some things you got to be aware of during the setup. And of course, the address scheme is a little bit different when you're used to the longer addresses, but they actually do have a 0x EVM address in there. But once you get used to the shortened address, you don't really want to go back to that. You can actually memorize the addresses because they're so short. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to swap over to Fight Farm. Oh, and looky there, we have some beautiful NFTs. Now, these are some older versions. The reason this was pulled up on the screen is because I was showing someone earlier when we do collaborations on Fight Farm. And this was Maria from Women in Cosmos. And she made some really cool, these are some one of ones, these two right here. That's probably two of the highest dollar amounts that we've made. Mr. Minded and Maria were pretty much neck and neck for the highest dollar amount made on any single NFT in Fight Farm, pushing that $90 range. Not bad for a a little old rinky-dink NFT collection in the Cosmos. Of course, if you didn't want to pay $90, you could have easily picked up the regular editions here for about $5 each. They may have been a little bit higher because I probably kicked some additional funds over to Maria for the creation of these NFTs. But you can see here, you have my created fighter graphic, and I did the template. And then, of course, I took Maria's beautiful artwork and layered it in the background. But that's just an example of some of the cool stuff we do when it comes to collaborations. For now, I'm going to go over to the collect now. So, if this is your first time, let me just give you a quick overview before we even get started. So give me 1 second. All right. So what is Fight Farm? Fight Farm is effectively a collectible trading card game. It's a speculative strategy game, and it's a way to engage players to collect fighter NFTs and build towards legend status, either solo or with the team to take over the cage or the pit. Now, right now, we started out building Fight Farm main event. That was our MMA version, mainly for UFC. And of course, recently we began testing the same gameplay style with Fight Farm in the Pit, which is for karate combat. Currently working in the background to fulfill the proper paperwork needed so that we can get the license to use the actual karate combat logos, graphics, all the things that you would want to become official. Um, so exciting time. Definitely going to keep working on the background with that. Hope that the next time we drop some NFTs here, that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So the core mission is to combine NFT collectibles, fandom for combat sports, specifically in this case, karate combat, and for the main event game for UFC or MMA, and of course, Web3 and crypto rewards. Some of the key features is we utilize NFT staking. We have a legend gameplay mechanics system, and there is even DAO involvement for team gameplay. All right, so as far as the game mechanics go, uh, let's start with the actual NFT minting process. So most NFTs, whenever you go and you think NFTs, and um, when you think about like the actual collections, right? You have collections that actually mint out. The cool thing about Fight Farm is like our goal is not to mint out. Like, I'm not going to sell you NFTs of a fighter, and then whoever gets those NFTs for that fighter, it's finished, right? I've seen combat sports, UFC, MMA. I've seen those kind of collections uh, on the lower end, ones that were not actually licensed products. And I never understood what their thought process was, because if you mint one of each fighter, or even if you mint multiples of each fighter, and that's all you do and you mint out, and maybe you have some utility to it, most of them don't. Maybe you have some long term game plan and some roadmap stuff you want to do. But we've all seen this, right? What happens? They sell you the NFTs, they take your money, and once the bear market creeps in and the masses exit the crypto market and all the liquidity exits the crypto market and all the prices dump, what happens? Most of those projects don't make it through the bear market into the next bull market. And even if they do, most of them are just speculative collectibles or speculative art with no real utility. Or if they do have utility, it is so blockchain and crypto centric, or it's so tied specifically to their own token, which may or may not have great tokenomics and a good use case that would actually create demand. There's so many pitfalls that people overlook. And especially when you're new, some of these people, I don't think they're scammers. I don't think that they are out to just take the money and run. But when you're new and you don't think something through, and maybe you just haven't, like, I've been in crypto since 2012. I've seen the cycles so many times. I've seen this 4-year cycle, the boom bust cycle of Bitcoin. Every 4 years, you have the halving, then you have the boom and the bull market, then you have the bust and the bear market. It's the natural market cycle. So far, we have not decoupled from that. So when you're planning a project, whether it's an actual like crypto or a DeFi or even an NFT project, you should be doing everything you could to build something that will retain users and become bear proof, which was if you take all if you take all of the actual like mixed martial arts, the MMA, the brand names, if you take all that and just push it aside, my number one goal had nothing to do necessarily with MMA. Although I'm a huge UFC, a huge combat sports fan, I'm a huge jiu-jitsu and grappling fan. Uh, I wanted to do something in the sports that I loved, but you could have taken my model and applied it to almost anything in sports. You choose combat sports, even karate combat. Like maybe they're sports fans, right? Maybe they like other sports as well. What's one of the reasons why people would love to pick UFC or martial arts or fighting over, say, basketball, football, golf, hockey, baseball? Well, for us, building a project, we could have chose any sport we liked and effectively created the same game. One of the main reasons, besides just my love of combat sports, but one of the main reasons you choose UFC is for a few reasons. One, it runs year round. It doesn't have seasons. Very rarely should you have any exterior interference that would cancel an event. Whereas if you have sports, right, baseball games, football games, anything outdoors can be called off due to weather events or rain or snow, sleet, ice. Now they try to play through those things, but we all know you could have events that do that. A second part of that is seasons, right? Basketball, football, golf, hockey, everything has a season. So if you're trying to generate something that has a year-round revenue model, you know, the UFC has a year-round revenue model. Karate Combat's going to have a year-round revenue model. These people have fights every month. Almost all MMA, even on the grassroots lower organizations, almost all of them have monthly events. It's the way the business cycle for combat sports runs. And if they don't, they still run year round, meaning there's not a season. Like you're not going to say, "Hey, from September to February is MMA season." No, it's not. It's freaking year round. So when you're talking about building a bear-proof crypto project, if you wanted to choose what I consider the perfect sport, I would say it has to be combat sports because whether it was boxing or I mean, you could even throw in like the fake stuff like pro wrestling. It's year round, right? People watch it year round. There's demand for it. Now, besides the exterior events that could cause cancellations like weather and that kind of stuff, besides the seasons, um, another reason that you could kind of advocate for fighting in general, I would say, is because I feel like it's kind of economic proof, meaning that if you have a recession or a depression, I could see a lot of other sports having a little bit of a pullback. Now, in general, I think sports should somewhat perform no matter what in a recession and depression, but we've seen a lot of sports leagues go bust. What do I mean by this, though? I think that fighting is just one of those things that even in the next Great Depression, it's not going anywhere. Like I would bet that the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the PG, I would bet almost every sport on earth, maybe other than soccer, actual football, that is the quote unquote world sport. But I'm going to tell you now, I don't think it's the world sport when you compare it to MMA. If I'm being real, I think MMA. I think fighting is the world sport because you can have fighters from all over the world, every country. And then, even soccer has seasons and some other stuff that kind of like you could kind of advocate for choosing fighting over that. So that's kind of the reasons why when I was talking about like building a bear proof crypto project. Now, the other thing is I wanted to make sure that you had constant demand and constant integration, constant uh, a reason to keep the collector and the player engaged, right? If I sell you one NFT for that fighter, or even if there was, say, five NFTs for Conor McGregor or whatever, like once you sell it, what are they going to do with it, right? And I hate when you see like NBA Top Shots. You see some of the officially licensed UFC stuff, like the video clips. I understand sports collectibles, and I understand the whole idea of like collectibles and scarcity and rarity and sports memorabilia. It's a part of the culture, and it's never going to leave. But when you're creating NFTs, you have a huge opportunity to take something like collectibles and combine them with utility. Now, you could say, well, watching a video clip is utility. Now you own more than just a picture, blah, blah, blah. Um, there's things you could do. You could even say, hey, stake the NFT for your own token, which we include that, and many places are going to include that. But the problem with that is what happens when if you're playing a game, whether it's a play to earn video game, uh, or even collect the NFT and stake it. If they're paying you out in their own token, and this is not a blast because I believe that should be an integration. But if it's the only thing that you're utilizing for rewards, I feel like you're running a huge risk because as the value of your token gets pounded into the ground in a bear market, like every 99% of every other token in the crypto market, you're going to lose players. So one of the easiest ways to fix that is how you reward players. And I think that's going to have to come from multiple revenue streams, multiple ways. For now, we have our own token as kind of like a points reward system, but that's not the main reason. And of course, you got to have some utilities and demands for that token to give it any value. And we do have some ideas on how we're going to use our fight token in the game. Uh, but if that's all I had, I would look at you right now and I would tell you that's not enough. We would fail. If it was all based on my NFTs and the fight token, I think we would fail. I've seen it too many times before. The play to earn, play to win. It's new and it's tricky, and we've seen a lot of things come and go that just didn't work. And when I was designing Fight Farm, I was trying to keep that in mind. So let's go back. Let me check back to my document really quick. Okay, so um, effectively, these NFTs that we sell, they are minted on demand and they're capped for rarity. And we mint a few weeks prior to the fight. If we have unsold NFTs, we do burn those NFTs. And we might keep a few for like promo for the next fights or doing giveaways, etc. But here's an example: Ren versus Screevers just happened, right? So imagine we minted, say, 50 NFTs for both those fighters, and uh, out of the 50, maybe say five went to the team. So 45 were like to the players. We might keep maybe two or three extras to do promo with, and then we probably have one listed on the market at a very high price. Because what we do is we cap those, right? We cap them, and we're not going to sell anymore. Meaning that if you did not buy those NFTs of that version for that fighter leading into the fight, you're going to have to go to the secondary market and buy it. You can't mint it anymore. So effectively, maybe in the future, the way the game and the way our collection will be set up will be where players feel like they're going to mint it. But for now, effectively, what I'm doing is I'm minting the NFTs and I'm listing them on the marketplace. Now I can list them for sale at whatever price, or I can put them up for auction. And we have utilized both at Fight Farm. So, all right. So here's something to consider. You have your total amount minted, and they're capped for rarity. So what does that mean? It means that if you bought Rend version 1 for this fight and you had the 50 that were minted originally and 45 went to the players, 5 went to the team. We had 3 for promos that are just sitting there in the wallet, liquid, and then we had 1 that we listed on the marketplace, say for $99. Now, why would we do that? Well, because if anyone wants to come buy it and no one else has listed it, I'm going to have at least 1 because that's income and revenue for Fight Farm. It also gives you, the collector, and you, the player, if you're smart, you didn't just buy 1 Rend NFT. Because if you do, you're trying to collect multiple versions so you can upgrade. Now, why would you want to buy more than 1 of the same version, that V1? We're gonna play Imagine What? Imagine If. Okay. Let's imagine if Ren fights, say, 5 more times in his career for Karate Combat, right? That means you're gonna have a V1, a V2, a V3, a V4, and a V5. You have 5 NFTs. In order to earn every single time Ren fights those next 5 fights, all you ever need is 1 NFT, right? If you bought a V1, cool. A V2, cool. A V3, you don't need all the versions. You don't need more than 1, but you are only going to earn from the rewards pool based on the number of NFTs you have for that fighter if they win. So keep that in mind, right? As you play the game and you become a collector, keep in mind that you're purchasing an NFT that ultimately long term is going to be a collectible, and it's going to have speculative value, and we're going to expand that supply for that fighter, and then later on we're going to contract that supply for that fighter. So you have to expand to grow and contribute to the rewards pool and create payouts and to upgrade. But towards the end of the career, once that fighter either leaves Karate Combat, they're no longer there. Maybe they go to another organization like One, or they go become a grappler, or they go do UFC, PFL. For whatever reason, if they leave Karate Combat, we won't mint any more NFTs for them for the Fight Farm and the Pit game. All right. Same thing with UFC or whatever organization. We keep our NFTs organization based. So if they leave the organization or if they retire from the sport altogether, you have a lot of incentive to collect at least 1 of every version, because if you have 1 of each version, you'll be able to um, burn those NFTs, which reduces the supply, and upgrade to a legend NFT. So let's go back to our imagine what if game, right? So let's say your long-term goal is to play the game and earn more money. You only need to buy 1 NFT. You could buy 1 NFT, stake it, and be done with it. So every time that fighter fights, if they win, you should get some sort of kickback, some sort of shared revenue from the rewards pool. If you buy multiples of the same version or multiple versions, the more NFTs, the more percentage you're going to rake from the rewards pool. So as you purchase these NFTs and you stake them, you're effectively kind of like locking them in the pit, right? You're locking them in. You're saying, "Hey, I'm here. I want to earn rewards based on this fighter's career." It's almost like having equity in that fighter's career. So let's say you get a V1, a V2, a V3, a V4, a V5. If you only purchase 1, that's cool. You only need 1, and you would earn multiples because on the first fight, you only have the V1. On the second fight, if you bought 1 of each, you had the V1 and a V2. So you're automatically raking a higher percentage than a player who came in and they just bought 1 V2 for the first time, right? Now, you could have a player come in, you could have 2, a V1 and a V2, and a new player comes along and buys 5 V2s because they're just new and they realize, oh, this is like a multiplier. And that's one reason why we price the regular NFTs at a lower pricing level, right? Because we're trying to incentivize you, the collector, to think in terms of multiples. And it's not because that's a money grab. It's because what we're trying to do is create an opportunity for you, the collector, and you, the player, to control the secondary market in the future. So let's go back to our Imagine What If game. So let's say instead of buying one per fighter or version, you bought 3. If you buy 3, here's what you could do. You could have 3 NFTs on V1. That means that you have 3 shares in that first fight. If that fighter wins, cool, you get a kickback. You're paid out by the NFT. So one NFT is going to earn less than 3 NFTs. If the fighter loses, you spent your money and you didn't get anything back. But it's not necessarily a loss because as long as you keep that fighter's NFT staked, when they fight again 4 months later, you wouldn't even have to buy the new version. Your 3v1s are staked, you'll still rake a percentage. So this is like, it's truly equity in the fighter's career when you think about it from that perspective. Okay, so as you purchase these NFTs and you buy 3, let's say you had 3v1s, 3v2s, 3v3s, 3v4, 3v5, right? You bought 3 of each. You got in early if you were able to buy them. They ever see Fight Farm, the first karate combat event they've ever watched, and they see Fight Farm, they want to try this out, they're really excited, and they go in the game, and their first NFT is a V4 for Rend. Okay. And maybe Rend is like their favorite fighter, right? They're just they've watched them. Now they want to play the game. They want to collect them. They have that collectible trading card feeling, just like you would have when you were like opening packs of cards and you were like finding the Kobe's and the Michael Jordans, and you want to have that feeling from a collectible perspective too, right? But ultimately, what they're doing is they're investing in that fighter's career in a way. So that player's new, they get a V4, and maybe they even come back the next time they got a V5, right? Well, what happens when Rend retires and that person is like a mega Rend fan, right? It's their favorite fighter. Or maybe it's not even their favorite fighter. Maybe they just want a legend NFT. So the way we do this is once the fighter leaves the karate combat or the organization, um, you're able to burn those NFTs and upgrade to one legend NFT. So if you have Ren and he has 5 versions, and a player came in and they got V4, V5, they're going to have to go back to the secondary market and buy a V1, a V2, and a V3. Some players may do that. Some players may not do that. That's the cool thing about Fight Farm. If you're a player, there is some balance because yes, the earlier you come in, you have an advantage, right? The reason I said threes is because if you think about it, every time I buy 3, I'm getting paid more than I would if I bought 1. Down the road, if I'm a huge collector and I don't want to like get rid of all my NFTs, I could keep 1. Especially if it's like a sentimental value of your favorite fighter. Some fighters you'll dump them, right? You don't care. You just wanted them for gameplay purposes. Um, but if you're like me and you're like a huge John Jones fan, you're probably not going to burn your John Jones, even to get a John Jones legend. You want at least one, maybe one of each version, because that's the collector in you, right? That's the sports memorabilia collectible side of it. Is I don't think you're going to see like all of every version, or even all of one single version burned. So, but you could see that, but I doubt it. And here's why. So let's go look at something really quick. I'm gonna switch over here and let me get back over to my browser. So when you look at these NFTs, right, you can go in here and you can see that I've got them listed as you scroll through here. You can always tell when you get to the current fight because you'll see multiples on the collect now page. Now, for us, the collect now is going to be right here on the left. You can switch between collect now, not listed if you have not transferable. Auctions right now, we have two up for auctions. They end in 4 hours and 51 minutes. And of course, you can switch to my NFTs. So we're in collect now. So these are the ones that have been recently minted, and they're for either an upcoming fight or they're ones that Fight Farm has listed after the fight, just so at least one of every NFT is listed, or you'll see ones that you, the collectors and players, have listed. So if a player comes along and their first exposure is to a V4 and V5, there is a chance that they will come back here to the secondary marketplace and look for the V1, the V2, and V3. And I would say, especially for fighters where, like, if they have a short career, like if you have someone like John Jones and they've got 20 fights and that equals 20 individual NFT versions, it might be a tall order to go back and like maybe you got in on like 20, right? Or maybe you got in on 10. So you collected 10. Are you really going to go back and scoop up 10 whole NFTs on the secondary? Maybe if you're a big baller, because I have a feeling that by then they're going to be expensive, especially for a very popular fighter like John Jones, right? Um, but let's say if you have someone who had kind of a short career by the time we started the game, they maybe got 3 fights and they're done, they retire. We only had 3 NFTs. You got the first V2 and V3, but you don't have the V1. Going back to purchase one NFT is a lot more likely, I would think. But a lot of this depends on like the demand, the popularity. There's a lot of trade-offs, incentive structures, and things that influence the demand on any given fighter. Um, but here's something to think about. If you purchase in quantities of 3, you could theoretically keep one as a collector. You could burn one so that you could burn one of every version and upgrade to your legend. And then you could take one and you could list it on the secondary market. Because as these sell off, you don't know exactly um, you don't know exactly how many are going to be left, and you don't know what the price or the costs on the secondary market is going to be. So I'm going to do this really quick. I'm going to take this up to say 70. All right. Okay, so we'll say rend v1. We'll do 10. Rend v2. We'll do say 12. Rend v3. We'll say that's a big bump, 30. Rend v4. You could even have a dip. We've seen it. We've had a few where you dip after that. You would think they would keep going up, up, and up as the game grows, but there could be something as simple as like the aesthetics of the artwork for that specific version, or something to do with like exterior variables to do with the fight. There's a lot of reasons why the later versions typically have an upward trend, but we have seen from time to time where a later version could dip for various reasons. And then we're going to do rend v5, and we'll say that's the mega one that finally like sold 50. So if you're looking at this, right? If you're looking right now, if you're looking right now, what's the most legends? If you need to burn one of every version, what's the most legends that you could have for a rend NFT for Karate Combat? And for those that don't know, when I say rend, I'm talking about this guy right here. Probably one of the most popular Karate Combat fighters right now. His record is ecstatic. His knockouts and fights are exciting. He just schooled the former champion this last fight in Rend. Um, it's one of those things where, like, if he sticks around, it's going to be exciting to create NFTs around these guys. I just can't wait to get that official part of it done, because that is the goal. So back to my document. Where the hell did it go? Okay. So what's the most legends you could have if you were required to burn one of every version? The most legends you could have would be 10. But do you think you're going to see 10 legends for that NFT? I don't think that you will, and here's why. So, if you look at this, I think that total right there is like 130. As you burn one of every version, you're reducing each individual version by one, but you are minting and increasing it with a legend. So there's an offset of like one, right? You'd be -5 plus one, so it's a net negative of four, right? Um, but there's a few reasons why I don't think you'll see all 10. And even if you did, imagine if you're -10, that means V1 would go to zero. There would be zero V1s left. They'd all get burned. That means V2 would go from 12 to 2. That's a big dip right there. Imagine if there's 12 of something and he's a popular fighter from a sports collectibles memorabilia standpoint, and then all of a sudden you can only get your hands on two. And maybe there's other aesthetics about those 12 that were very cool. Like maybe we worked with a collab with a famous NFT artist. Maybe the artwork was like the most popular. Maybe V2 is the most popular of those five, and you just took them from 12 to 2. Imagine the resale secondary value in the future once Ren retires. These NFTs can no longer earn you any revenue anymore from a gameplay perspective. You can't earn from the rewards unless he's fighting, unless he wins. So once he retires or once he leaves Karate Combat, that NFT effectively is rendered a collectible. But you can burn and upgrade, and there is an incentive for you to do that. Now, what's the incentive? The incentive for you to burn and upgrade and fight farm is, imagine Ren retires, you do the required burning, right? You go through the process. We burn off all five versions. We mint one Ren legend. There's going to be a way to have. At first, it'll be randomized, but I think over time, eventually, we'll upgrade it, and we will allow you to have some sort of like mobile gameplay, knowledge based, or like even just tap, tap, tap. We will come up with other ways probably to make the selection for legend gameplay a lot more competitive. But at first, just as a way to get the game launched and going, it'll be random, meaning you might have 12 legends that have minted trying to get in on one slot to risk their legend to do a fight prediction and steal half the pot. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say, uh, who's two Karate Combat guys besides Rendon Screevers? Let's say you have Vergara and Chomaya here, right? Let's say they're fighting next. And even if you have a NFT for both of these fighters and you have them staked and you can earn on that fight, anyone can implement Legends gameplay as long as you have a Legend NFT. The thing you have to think about this though is think about a whole Karate Combat card. You might have, say, um, 10 fights on the entire card. Out of the 10 fights, we may not have a Legends gameplay enabled fight for every fight. We might only enable Legends for, say, 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10, because you kind of want to keep it special, and you want people to be able to play with the regular NFTs, the regular ones they're buying for that fight, and earn a full rewards pool without the risk of a legend NFT stealing half of the rewards pool. So what do I mean by that? So let's say, here we've got $1,000, and that's the rewards pool, and fighter A and fighter B, and you have, say, 60 NFTs and 50 NFTs. right? So if you look at uh, the way the game would work, if all the NFTs were staked for the sake of this example, because maybe they're not, you could have 60 NFTs, but if only 40 are staked, effectively only 40 people are eligible for rewards. So keep that in mind. If you have the NFT liquid in your wallet or you have the NFT listed on the marketplace for resale, you don't earn rewards. But that's good for the people who have it staked. But it's also good for you if you have it for sale on the secondary, because if there's a total of 60 NFTs for Fighter A, say that's five different versions, right? That means when you put your NFT up for sale on the market, out of the total of 60 for that fighter, only 20 are available, which means it's a very small amount between the different versions that are actually listed, and you may not see all 20 listed. Out of that 20, you might see four NFTs for that fighter listed. The other 16 are liquid in the wallet. That could be because you rewarded that NFT as a reward. That person's not paying attention. They don't play the game. It was a promo NFT. There's a lot of reasons why NFTs don't get staked, and I can show you right now. If I switch over to Fight Farm Main Event, and this is the actual DAO that we use uh, to do our gameplay for the MMA game. Um, if you look at the total number of NFTs, which is 2,043 total NFTs from Fight Farm, 194 are listed, right? Out of the 2,000, 194 are listed for sale. So that's a pretty low percentage listed for sale out of the total supply. If you look at that total supply, though, and you go back to the DAO, only 976 out of that 2,000 and some odd NFTs, that's 47% of the supply. So, what does that do for the payouts for you, the player, when you have your NFT staked? You're competing with about half the supply. So if you have $1,000 and there's 500 NFTs, you're getting $2 per NFT. But if all 1,000 were staked, you get $1 per NFT. So it's a percentage game, right? And the way we do this is you stake your NFT. There's a 2-week unbonding period, which that could be changed via governance. 2 weeks just made sense based on fights happen once a month, and um, 2 weeks was like just made a number that made sense, but that could change. So it's an arbitrary number. You could choose any number of weeks or days or hours or whatever. But the main thing to consider is like even in our current game that's been running for MMA for UFC for like almost 2 years, we only have less than 50% of the supply actively playing and actively earning rewards. Um, I, Once we get Karate Combat up and running, and it's like a licensed game, and we probably have a lot more promo, a lot more interaction. Um, I'm curious to see what percentage of those NFTs will be staked. Um, but yeah, let's go back to the notes now. So let's say fighter A, fighter B, right? So $60. If we have $1,000 divided by 60, that's $16 per player, right? And obviously, if it's $1,000 divided by 50, that's $20 per player. So you're an NFT collector, and for every NFT you stake for that fighter, if that fighter wins, you could pull either 16 something or 20 bucks. Now, if the Ren player who burnt his one of each version and he has a legend, and let's say he plays the randomized game and he wins the slot, he's going to come in and he's going to look at this fight and he has to pick which one of these two fighters is going to win. Is it going to be Vergara or Chamaya? Is it fighter A or fighter B? When that player with the legend NFT chooses, he's risking his legend NFT. Why? Because he wants to take 50% and leave you guys with 500 bucks. He wants to walk off with $500, and then fighter A or fighter B's staked NFTs, you can only split 500. So you just got your earnings cut in half because the legend NFT stole half your rewards. It wouldn't make sense to enable legend NFT gameplay for every single fight. I think that'd be super frustrating uh, for players who just got in the game, especially if it's your first NFT and you think you're going to get like, oh, I'm a fighter and I come in and I bought an NFT for $5, but if I win, I'm going to get like $1 back. And you're like, that's, almost, so let's say it's $4. If I win, I'm going to get $1 back, and that's 25%, right? You start to play this math in your head on like, well, how many fights do I need before I recover all my investment? And then I'm in the profit potentially, right? There's a lot of strategy that you're going to start to use from a collector standpoint. And the legend gameplay is going to really impact that. So there has to be a balance. There's a reason why most likely, we wouldn't want every single fight to be legend enabled. But say if we have 30 or 40% of them enabled, or maybe 20% even, maybe two, you could say just the main event fights are legend enabled. Or you could say you could really probably use the legend stuff to incentivize sales on the least popular fights and matches on the whole card. Why? Because there's a flip side here. If that legend player chooses fighter A, but fighter B wins, here's what happens. They don't walk away with your 500 bucks. In order to play the legend, they had to deposit that legend NFT into the treasury, right? So when they're on the GUI, the gameplay and stuff, like their legend NFT becomes collateral and they can't just walk away with it. The same way they can't walk away with your money, like there's going to be a way to ensure that, hey, if I'm risking my NFT, I want to make sure I get paid. Like you set this game up so that neither side can get screwed. And it's easy to do that with smart contracts and with DAOs, right? You can build like a trustless system, and we've already been doing that with DAO and doing it manually. So imagine when we automate this stuff, and it's a lot easier to scale. But for now, they deposit their legend into the treasury as collateral for safekeeping. Of course, the money is in the treasury as collateral for safekeeping. If they choose correctly, they run off with 500 bucks. Now that still leaves $500 for you guys. So you're not like totally screwed. You didn't totally waste your money for buying that fighter. You didn't totally like waste your time or effort for keeping that fighter staked, but it did impact your earnings. And it should incentivize you then to say, you know what, I need to start getting some legends because I want to be the person to steal half the pot. Um, but let's say they choose incorrectly. What happens is fighter A was who the legend NFT predicted to win. Fighter B won. So that means fighter B, their 50 NFTs get their 20 bucks a pop. Fighter A walks away with zero money and they lost their legend NFT. So there's a huge risk reward here, but there has to be. There has to be a risk reward because if you're going to steal half the pot from a bunch of other players, like you have to be able to put something up, right? It's like you're all or nothing, right? So that could be a huge blow. If you only had 5 NFTs and you paid $5 per NFT, right? And that's $25 total, and you lose $25 on a legend, not a big deal, right? But let's say if you got in on version 4 or 5 and you paid $5 each, but then for version 1, 2, and 3, you had to buy on the secondary, and the earlier players who gobbled those up during that time frame are listing them for $99 or $79 or $500. Like the amount of money in to a legend is going to be used to determine whether they should risk that amount of money to chase X amount of half of a pot. Um, so there's a lot of things to consider, and cost of investment is one of them. Because are you going to risk $800 you spent on 5 NFTs to go chase half of $1,000 pot and win 500? Some people might, but maybe not. I doubt it. But let's say if you risked, you got all five for $5 each. You bought the lowest price NFT, you collected them all, you burnt them, you're 25 in, It makes perfect sense for you to risk 25 to win 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 or like there's going to be as the game grows and the secondary market becomes really into play, the risk reward model for what you would even risk to steal half a pot will make a huge difference, right? So that's the way legend gameplay works. Now let's go back to our original statement here. I said I don't think you will see all 10 of them get burned. Why? Because as you burn these and you decrease, right? You're going to go from 12 to 2, from 30 to 20, from 28 to 18, and from 50 to 40. You're decreasing the supply of each individual version of a fighter. You're decreasing the overall supply of that fighter, period, and you're decreasing the supply of the entire collection of Fight Farm with this supply burn incentives, right? And the reason you're doing that is because you have an incentive to burn them because, for one, it gives you the ability to leverage that asset and still reward some other players at a much higher payout than just a regular payout in the game would net you. For the other part of that is you could buy that legend and maybe you're only 25 bucks in or 100 bucks in, but then you flip it, right? Maybe you're not willing to risk the legend. You're like, I don't know that much about karate combat. I don't know that much about MMA. I'm not great at picking winners. I don't want to like lose my NFT for picking the wrong fight. You might just flip it into a legend and go post that thing on the secondary, and you're 100 bucks in or 50 bucks in on it, and you sell it for 300. Why? Because someone's going to say, dude, even if it's 300 bucks, I don't have all the NFTs for Ren. And you might be like, Ren's my favorite fighter. I just want to collect his legend and keep it. I'll never risk it. Or you might be like, Ren's my a fighter I don't care about per se. I just want the legend so I can take that $300 investment that I made on the secondary and go try to steal 500 or 1,000 or whatever the 50% of the rewards pool is on a specific fight. Um, so that's kind of the idea behind it. Now, as you start to burn them off and you're reducing each supply, the value that's left, like when you go from 10 to 9 or 10 to 8 or 10 to 7, you still have 7 left, 8 left, right? But what happens when you get down to, say, 3v1s or 2v1s? Some people are going to be like, dude, I paid $5 for this thing, but I'm not selling it to you for 20 bucks. You're going to give, like, I know you want a legend. I know that legend that you get could steal you big money, or you could flip that legend on the secondary. If I'm going to let this thing go and it's Ren V1, the first one of Ren, a very famous popular fighter, and there's only 2 left or 3 left, $300, $200, right? They're going to go by the demand. And the market's going to decide because he might list it for 300 and then the other person that has the other version might come in and say 250 and boom. Maybe someone wouldn't pay 300 but 250 was a go, 200 was a go, 100 was a go. That's my point is this is more than a fighting game. This is going to be a secondary NFT market game based on incentives and demand and the outcome of fights and the ability to upgrade your NFT. There's so many metrics that go into this thing. So let's look at the supply real quick of a fighter, right? And of course, I don't have a lot for karate combat yet in the pit, so uh, I'm just going to use this one here, and I'm going to put in the jewel because I know the jewel is a great example. So the Jewel is a NFT that I created that is pegged to Justin Poirier in the UFC. Now, we don't use the UFC logo. We don't use the UFC fighter's name. We don't use their pictures. We don't use their official nicknames. We create our own NFT and our own NFT art, and it's kind of like the NFT is pegged to the fighter. The beauty about karate combat is I'm going to be able to use the actual stuff because the amount of money it costs to do the licensing is very good, and they're young, they're new, and they're growing. and we can come in and grow along with them. But one day, if we can get the capital, it would be awesome to be able to afford to run a game like this for UFC, even because um, that's the ultimate goal, right? You want to scale this up so you can cover all of combat sports, have one big combat sports game DAO that has this for every league. For all of us fight fans, you know, that's what the ultimate goal would be. Now, when you look at these NFTs, you can see here, this is a version 0.5 Anarchy Edition. Now, that's a one of one. I doubt that one would ever get burnt. Now, there is one caveat. If it says V1 or V1.5 or V2 or V2.5 or V3 or V3.5, the dot .5 signifies that it's either a limited edition or a collab edition. There's something special about it. There's effectively no difference between a V1 and a V1.5. All you have to know is the V1 is going to be less rare than the V1.5 because the V1.5 either minted less or it minted something that had like some sort of collab or artistic value, or it was a special edition. Maybe we didn't mint a one of one, but maybe we minted three. So you could have a one of three or a two of three, right? So the caveat here is the V0.5s were purely meant to be artistic value. And yes, they do earn regular in the game, but they are not eligible to be burned. So the Anarchy series that we released for Fight Farm main event, we will not have those be burned. Okay. So kick this one to the side, right? That's a special edition, but this was a good one to bring up so you could see that hey, there are a few NFTs, a handful for any given fighter that will not be eligible for the legend upgrade. And you will know that before you buy it. Like people who bought these, they knew like these were not going to be upgradable. Now they could have other rewards. You might have an Anarchy DAO where it's a profit sharing or something, or staking rewards, and you could stake them and earn revenue. There's a lot of things you can do to reward them for never destroying that NFT. Now, if you look here, the Jewel V3, right? We have this really cool artwork by my friend Pishro Farnaz, and she has a little cat and the goldfish. I have the picture of the fighter, and this is a V3. If you scroll through here, I believe there's like 12 or so, right? And once you look at the V3s, eventually you get to the V2s. Now, the V2s are the same thing. We had my friend Shaq, she did some cool paintings, and you see one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. So you had like 12, you had eight, and then you get down to V1. You have a blackout edition here, which is also a weird one of one. This one was a 2.5, so it's eligible to be burned. But do you think that this one with this specific 90s artwork, do you think this one's going to be burned when it's the only one? Not likely. It could, but if I'm guessing, you have all these other versions. I'm going to say the price of that one's going to be so radically expensive, the player is not going to want to burn it themselves to get a legend, and they're either going to keep it for the collectability of it or they're going to flip it on the secondary for a much, much, much higher price. And the person buying it is not buying that one. You could buy any of the multiples of these other versions, right? You have 8 V2s. Why would you pay, say, $500 for this one when you could get this one for 80 or 60 or 50 or 20, right? So that's what I'm talking about. I don't think you're going to see all of any one particular version be burned because you have specific one of ones, right? Now let's see the V1s. This was the very first. You can tell by the artwork. You can tell by the card layout and the just the overall look and feel. Like this was early. I think this may have been the one of the very first Fight Farm NFTs we ever did on OmniFlix. And you have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Now, there could be more than that because these are just the ones that are not listed, meaning they're not listed on there for sale. They're either held by the player or they're staked in the DAO to earn rewards, based on Dustin Poirier's fight wins. Now, we know Dustin Poirier has said, I'm going to retire after the next fight. We have one version left. That's it. V1, V2, V3 that you just seen here, and whatever we sell a V4. That's it. After that, they become collectibles. Even if you leave them staked to earn fight, okay, if you're a collector and you don't want to get rid of it, yeah, you can earn fight. But you're not going to earn any payouts because Dustin Poirier is not fighting. He is retired. Even if he retires from UFC and he goes elsewhere, let's say he goes to BKFC for bare knuckle, or he goes over to Karate Combat. Yeah, we might mint him over there in those collections and those games, but that has nothing to do with Fight Farm Main Event from where he was MMA in the UFC. So what I mean by that is like this is all. This is it. You're gonna have these versions, and that's it. I don't think when you get down to these V1s, you're gonna see all of them burned, and that's the lowest count. If I go over here to collect now, and I type in the jewel, right? It'll pull up the ones that are there. So you have 3 listed. There are no V1s listed for sale. There's a V3 and 2 V2s. So really on the V2s instead of 8, that brings a total to 10. And on the V3s instead of 12, I think that brings the total to 13. So you're talking about the minimum possible legends for the Jewel NFT is going to be these 8 that you see right here. So as you burn them, each version is going to reduce in supply. Now, to be fair, the V4 that we're going to release soon, if it mints less than 8, you could see 6 or 7, right, or whatever the number is. I highly doubt, as much as we've grown as a game and as a brand, I highly doubt that we'll have less than 8 for someone as popular as Dustin Poirier. And for a collection, I mean, you're talking about the very first one was a regular one, but you have this one of one here. You have a collab with a painter here. Oh, also, guys, when you see these ones like this that have these collabs, you get the additional painting NFT in the background. So, like, you're buying that NFT for $5 or $7 or whatever, but we're airdropping you the actual artwork from that artist in their collection. And you can do whatever you want with it. You can keep it, you could sell it, you could flip it. It's just extra value, right? We're working with artists to promote art and promote NFTs and to promote other brands. And that's the power of NFTs from a sport perspective is you can really do a lot. Now look at this. You saw how many of these up here with the cat and the goldfish, right? That was the regular edition. But if you look at this one here, it's the one of one. Now, if you were going to buy an NFT or if you had multiples and you were going to burn it to mint a legend, would you burn the one with the cat where there's like 9 of them? Or would you burn this one where it's just this is it? This is the only one. That background behind the jewel right there, it's a one of one. Most likely, that one will not get burned. Most likely, even if you flip it and sell it at a much higher price on the secondary, the buyer is buying it from a memorabilia collectability standpoint, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Is once you start to see that from that perspective, it makes you realize, dang man. So as you burn these off, right? And you burn, you minus 1 here, you minus 1 there, minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. You've got 3 left. Do you think the 3 left of the V1, if those things cost $5 on day 1 and they got burn, and now like maybe the person who has the V1, they don't have the V2, 3, 4, or 5. Maybe they only got the one V1. They don't really have a lot of incentive, especially if they're not really a UFC fan or they're not really into the game. Maybe they got it as a promo for free. They're going to come to the secondary market and sell it. And if they're smart, they're not going to sell that thing for 20 bucks. They're going to look and say, man, Someone out there who has the V2 and V3 and V4 needs this V1, and they can make a lot of money using that legend NFT to steal rewards from other players. They should list it based on that type of demand. And I can't tell you the dollar value. That's going to vary. I don't know. That's going to be for the market to decide, for you, the players, to decide, and a lot of other variables. But I'm just giving you from the game design perspective. That's what I was planning on, right? So as you look at these here, you know the most you can have is 10, but you're not going to see 10 for rent. You're just probably not going to see it because out of those 10, at least one of them was a V1 first edition. That means the artwork was different and it was special. Now, the other 9 were all probably the same artwork. Or if you had a V1, was a one of one, and maybe you had a special edition that was 3, then that's still 1, 2, 3, 4. That means 6 out of 10, um, maybe 7 out of 10, maybe. And that's if they even want to burn it, right? Because remember, some of these people are going to be like, the game, the money, whatever. I don't care. I'm a collector. How many people collect baseball cards? And yeah, they could flip them, they could sell money, or basketball cards, but they're not in it for the money. And if they are, it's going to take such an astronomical amount of money to make that value leave their hands. They're in it truly for the love of the game, the love of the player, the love of the fighter. And I think that's going to play a pivotal role in Fight Farm. All right, so we're about an hour in, and I'm not even sure I got past the first bullet point. So let me go back over. Um, let me go back over and look. So we were talking about the rarity structure, right? You have regular editions. They're minted at the cheapest price point. Usually for Fight Farm main event, that was from a $5 to $7, $10 range at the most. Depending on if you're playing a collab artist, a percentage, and all kinds of stuff. A lot of times we would have things go on sale for $3. Um, then you have limited editions that are more rare. Like I said, that could be a 1 of 3, a 1 of 5. Then you have the first edition 1 of 1s. Those are very rare because even if I don't have a collab artist, there's no special artwork, there's no whatever. Even if I, the creator, make that and it's just an official Fight Farm, the 1 of 1 layout and art is always going to be different than the rest of the NFTs in that version. Why? Because I want to give you the value. I want someone to have that. Now, the 1 of 1, if it has a collaborator, dude, we've had some 1 of 1s go as high as $90, which in the NFT world is not a lot of money. But for us, when the average price is say $5 to sell the 1 of 1s for 90 was a pretty big deal. Now, for the ones that I've created for Fight Farm with no collab artist, most of those 1 of 1s are going from anywhere from 10, $20. I think the highest I've sold one for is 30 or 35 that I've created personally with no collaborator from another collection. Um, so those collab versions are probably the most rare, or at least the 1 of 1s in the collabs are the most rare. So the staking benefits, you can earn the fight token just for staking. That probably won't be live over on Hedera or Karate Combat. If we end up hosting this and staying on Omniflix or other blockchains and Cosmos, we can still do the fight token there. Fight token on our end is still up for we're still working on it effectively. We did do like an early distro to some early supporters, but those distros are it, right? The actual like tokenomics and some of the other stuff are things we're still working on. The rewards pool. So a percentage of all NFT sales are allocated to the treasury. So we have something called the pot, the protocol owned treasury. I get asked this a lot. Is Fight Farm betting or gambling? I'm going to say no, and here's why. If I place a bet and it's betting or gambling, how do I get paid out? I'm either getting paid A, directly from the other player, meaning they lost the money, they have to pay me, or B, I'm getting paid that money coming in directly from the house or the intermediary, right? But typically, it's still that first batch of money. So if all the money that came in for fighter B has to pay out all the people who bet on fighter A, it's still betting even if the intermediary paid you because it's the money raised directly from the bets from the other players. So here's something to consider. I can't guarantee you that if you purchase the NFT that you're going to stake it. And I can't guarantee that if you don't stake it that you're even eligible to win or earn any money. So in my mind, I'm like, well, that's not gambling because if you place a bet, you're guaranteed to win if the fighter wins. In Fight Farm, if you purchase the fighter NFT but you don't stake it, even if the fighter wins, you didn't earn or win any money. So that's the first layer. Like there's a barrier there, and a lot of these NFTs that we put up, you saw less than 50%, 40% of all the NFTs that we have are staked to earn rewards. Not even half are earning. So is that betting? Can you ever see like half half the winners of a bet didn't get paid out? No, it doesn't work like that. If you place a bet, either the other players are going to play you or the house is going to pay you. Like there is no, oh, well, you didn't stake your bet, so you don't get it. It doesn't matter that your fight that your person you had won. So that's the first layer. The second layer is how do we pay you? Like in a bet, that money's coming directly from the other players, or it's coming from the other players to the house, or from the house to me. You're never going to see that money on the way we pay out right now. You're never going to see that money coming directly from the other players or even directly from Fight Farm as the house. Why? Because that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is as you purchase the NFT, a percentage goes to the treasury for the NFT DAO in which you are staking your NFTs. This is more like a partial ownership and combining your collateral or combining your funds, right? So in that sense, it's not betting because you're not going to get paid out directly from those funds, those fees that we made from selling the NFT. Um, what we do is we take the money that we earn as revenue, we put it in a wide variety of assets that earn yield. That could be staking for proof of stake that earns staking rewards. That could be over in DeFi for providing LPs, for lending. It could be from just holding crypto and waiting for the price to go up. Like you buy Bitcoin at 50,000, when it gets to 100,000, you take that profit and you distribute it. Um, but my point is like you're not getting that initial value from the sale. You're being paid from the revenue and the interest that's pushed out. And the money from the sales never leave. It's right there in the DAO, and we all collectively own. It's protocol owned, meaning we all collectively own it together. And as a DAO, we make decisions on how to utilize that capital to produce a yield, and then we distribute that yield, but we distribute it based on two things. One, you have to be staked, which lessens the total supply on the open market, which increases potentially, if the demand is there, it could have a positive impact on the prices that you charge on the secondary. And the random act of the fight win. So would that make it a security then, right? I don't think so. And here's why. I can't guarantee you, and I'm not telling you to buy this NFT because you are going to get a return. I can't. Two things. I don't know when you buy it if you're going to stake it. And I don't know even if you stake it that the fighter's going to win. And even if the fighter were to win, I can't tell you whether they win once and you get one return for the next 5 years, or if they win 20 times like John Jones and you get 20 returns in the next 5 years. You see what I'm saying? Like, in that sense, to me, it's not a security because there's no guarantee or expectation that you should win or that you should earn, because it's very possible. If you had purchased NFTs for El Kakui and UFC and MMA, that dude, when he was on a kick, went 12-0, 12 wins and 0 losses. If you look since 2022, he's went 0-8. Well, by the time Fight Farm launched, if we had minted, say, 5 NFTs for his last 5 fights and he went 0-5, I have zero control over that. I can't tell you when you purchase any specific fighter NFT that you should expect any sort of return. I can't tell you that. So in my mind, it's not a security because there's two layers there. One is a layer where you have to interact in a certain way that's required, that many people, more than half of our players, they don't interact like that. They don't even do it. They don't stake it. They don't care about the game. They either just love the art, they just love the fighter, or they just got an NFT that they're not even paying attention to. But they're not earning or winning anything based on that, right? So from that perspective, I can't guarantee you that you're going to win. Now, even if you were to stake, I can't guarantee you that they're going to win the fight. So that's always been my way of thinking from the design standpoint, is how can I create something that's not technically gambling and not technically a security? And I think that's pretty close, because if it's your asset that's earning you your own yield, is that even still a security? Like, where does the revenue have to come from for any security to pay you out? Um, let's take a stock, for example. Where does the money have to come from in order for a stock that you bought for you to sell it at a profit? It has to come from other people purchasing the stock. Now, if the stock paid a dividend, I guess that could be considered a security. So, does that mean Fight Farm, uh, if it's paying you out a revenue share, would that make it a security? I would say if it was guaranteed and expected, but at this point, I don't think it's guaranteed or expected, because we've even had NFTs where we hosted a fight. They bought the NFT. They may have won, they may not have won and got a payout. But then we didn't have the manpower to even do the next fights, you know? Now, that shouldn't be the overall case as we scale. You want to be able to offer that scalability and that collectability for all the fighters. You want that to kind of be like a built-in thing where, like, if I buy fighter A, I want to know that for his next few fights, so he either leaves or retires, that I'm going to be able to keep on collecting and playing the game, right? That is the goal. That is what we're working towards. But yeah, so that's kind of like where that comes from. And I'm not sure how we got off on the whole thing, but I think we are talking about the staking benefits. So you have earn fight. You can win stable coins or crypto rewards based on the outcome of the fight. There is a 14-day unlock period removed from staking. The funding source, a percentage of every NFT that we sell is allocated to the treasury. We have diversification, so we're going to go between staked cryptos, stable coins, and DeFi to generate revenue and pay out winning fighter NFTs. The payout mechanics, rewards are paid out based on the total number of NFTs staked per fighter. So the more you stake, the larger percentage you rake from the rewards pool. All right, legend gameplay, we kind of went over that. You collect all versions of an individual fighter's NFT to build your rewards potential. If a fighter leaves karate combat or retires, the NFTs no longer have earning potential. At that point, all you own, or if you own all the fighters versions, you will be eligible to burn them to upgrade to a legend version of fighter. There is a financial incentive to upgrade to a legend NFT. Lottery system, we kind of touched on that for now. It will be a if you have say 12 legends competing for a slot to wager their legend or risk their legend and try to steal rewards from that pot from those other players. Um, right now, it's a random selection. In the future, it'd be really cool if we could find a way to build like a mobile or browser based game that's either like you know a button mashing game or some sort of skill based game or even a knowledge based game when it comes to knowing like the sport or crypto knowledge. Risk reward mechanics. In order to provide incentives to collect and upgrade, you need to build a large enough financial motive. That is why I told you that we need to build our treasury. We need to scale the game, scale the NFT sales. If you could do that, then that means that the pot gets bigger. As the pots get bigger in size, the greed factor kicks in, and then more people say, hey, last year these pots were 10, 20, 50, 100 bucks. Now look a year later, they're $1,000. Now look a year later, they're 10,000 bucks. Like you want to scale the game and the rewards because that's going to attract new players. It's going to attract more money and more revenue coming in to pad the treasury and increase the rewards. And it's kind of a flywheel effect. Um, but you have to risk it, right? So if you upgrade to the legend and you have a financial motive, you can't have that motive and win that money without a risk and consequence for playing that legend NFT. So you're risking a legend to attempt to steal rewards from other winning staked NFTs for fighters. If you make a correct fight prediction, you will get your legend NFT back. It'll be returned to you, and you will steal 50% of the reward. So, like our example earlier, where we had these right here, and you had the pot was $1,000. So either they're going to steal $500 and get their legend back, or they're going to lose that legend, and that's kind of where we was getting to. So if they lose the legend, you got three options. One, you can burn, you can vote. So imagine this. He bet on fighter A, but fighter B wins. If fighter B wins, those 50 fighters get to decide the fate of that one legend NFT. And here's their options. They're going to vote on options because remember, this is a DAO and you're going to be able to vote in the game. You can burn legend for a fight bribe. So if you want some more money, if fights pop in, there's things you can do with fight. Uh, you need fight to do certain things in the game, maybe to upgrade to legends or whatever the incentive structures and the use cases we have for that. You will have the ability to burn the legend and accept a bribe a fight. Then you have the greed factor. What's that? That's where you award the legend to random solo player. Okay. The greed factor. So out of those 50 players, they voted to give that legend to one player. Okay. And then lastly, the team factor. Award the legend to a DAO. So out of those 50 players, and think about this, award the legend to a DAO. Well, out of 50 players, how do you know there's not going to be two DAOs or three DAOs competing? You got 50 NFTs there staked. If they collected multiples, right? And these are low numbers right now. So maybe if it was only 50, but imagine we scale the game and you get to where there's like 300, right? You think out of those 300 NFTs staked, there's only going to be one DAO? Probably not. You're probably going to have two or three DAOs. So when you vote, you're voting for the DAO option, but then you're selecting a specific DAO that you're putting in for based on their DAO name and their treasury address. Because you might see it out of 300 NFTs staked, maybe you get some for the bribe, maybe you get some for the solo reward player, but maybe you have three different DAOs, and out of that voting, 20 NFTs voted for one DAO, 22 voted for a second DAO, and then 10 voted for the third DAO. Whoever voted for those 22, they're going to get it. And even if you voted for the DAO option, if you voted for a different DAO, you're not included. Only those 22 players that voted for that DAO, that treasury is going to get that legend NFT. And that's where this game goes from being like a solo gameplay thing to a team. Because if you know, as a DAO, if you get a legend, you can play that and steal $500 here, $500 there. I can list it on the secondary market and I can flip it for $300. Maybe there's some NFT fi stuff you can do to it. You can lend it out, or you could leverage it. You could use it as collateral on a loan and say, borrow 200 USDC, and they would accept it as collateral because there is a revenue stream associated with that legend NFT. Um, that's going to be a lot of incentive for DAOs to become legend hunters effectively. Well, what does that mean? If you want to like collect NFTs as a DAO and upgrade, you could do it that way. But wouldn't just all the players in the DAO start to buy all the regular NFTs and not just one? They buy multiples, 5, 10 of one version and stake them, 5, 10 of another version. Then you've got like 100 players in your DAO. Maybe out of the 100, only 50 people are playing. But it ramps up the purchasing of those cheap regular versions, not the one of ones, not the special editions, not the ones of the artsy collectors for the long term, but it'll start to push the regular sales of the regular versions through the roof, right? Why? Because if you have a legend that was bet or wagered or risked in a game and they lose, whoever has the most voting power, and it's based on the NFT for that fighter who won the match, and that legend bet against that fighter. You see what I'm saying? So the demand for that player uh, is going to skyrocket. The demand for regular players is going to skyrocket because DAOs are going to start to gobble them up. This is a cheap $5 investment that, yeah, we can win if the fighter wins, but we're there for like, hey, let's get some legends on this thing, because they're counting on, you can't possibly be choosing fight predictions and be right 100% of the time. And the people who are prepared, the people who are ready, and you're collecting all the NFTs, when that legend's lost, you just gobbled it up for free for the entire group. And now you have revenue streams inside of your DAO from either betting on fights or flipping on secondary or using as collateral for lending. All the things that we know NFTs will be used for in the future when it comes to that kind of stuff. So as we go back over here, right, and we look at Fight Farm, right, like I said, I don't think you're going to see a lot of uh, I don't think you're going to see a lot of low numbers long term, because as the game scales, this goes up significantly. We'll probably have to adjust the limits, because right now it's easy to say, hey, you've got 10 or 8 or 7 or 30. It's easy to say, like, if you have a max of a version of a fighter at 100 or 50 or 30, it's easy to say, well, the most legends they can mint is 8, right? Well, what happens when like you have 1,000 NFTs for a single fighter over 5 versions, and some of those versions are 50 and 60? Like, do you really want to have 50 or 60 legends for a fighter in the future? Not really. So we'll probably have to adjust as the game scales. I don't know how that'll go, but I think we will figure it out, right? And there's also going to be like probably other use cases that we give legends outside of the game that can really pull a lot of them off the game part of the market. So if there's a lot of risk on predicting fights to use your legend, you could still lose it. So the more things that we give you to do the legend that you don't have to risk losing it, or you lessen your risk of losing it, I think that'll kind of really push the demand and kind of counterbalance the amount of legends that are competing for a slot um, to still reward some other players. All right, so back to my notes really quick. We're going to wrap this up. I'm about an hour and a half in. All right, so we talked about the consequence of a loss, right? They can either accept the fight bribe to burn it, that reduces the supply of legends. I don't know that that's enough. For now, at least there's some reason to deflate and have deflationary pressure on legends. But a lot of that's going to be with like how much value can we give the fight token. And guys, realize this. This is the first three options. This will morph and change as time goes on. We've already been discussing option 4 and option 5. Other outcomes can be added at a later time. The voting system. There is one thing you need to realize, and the voting system is very nuanced. There's a few things you have to realize. One, you must vote to be included in the reward. So if you're not paying attention and a fighter wins and a legend was lost, and there's a say a 48-hour voting period after the fights that weekend to come and vote on the outcome and the uh, what happens to that legend NFT. If you miss the vote, out of those 50 NFTs that were invited to vote because they won, maybe 30 of them vote. The other 20 are excluded. So if it goes to the DAO, um, ownership or any of the options, you don't get included. So if it gets burned for the fight, nope, just those 30 get included, right? Why? Because you didn't vote. You weren't paying attention. So don't sleep on it. You got to pay attention after the fights now, which is what we want. We want engagement. We want people watching the fights. We want them playing. We want them thinking about the NFT collection in the game in line with the actual real world fight. I don't want to sell you an NFT where like, oh, I own this, but that's it. That's all I can do. I own it. Okay. Who gives a shit? Boring. Um, so you must vote to be included in the reward. Now, here's the second kicker. Voting in alignment with the winning outcome ensures inclusion in the rewards. This is going to bring some drama in politics into the game alignment. So, what do I mean by that? If you vote, right? If you vote for, say, option 1 to burn the legend for the fight bribe, if 10 people vote for that and that's the winning vote, that's it. Those 10 get to fight. The rest of the players have voted for the DAO and the solo option. Nope, they're not included. The same thing goes with the greed factor. If the greed factor option wins, but you voted for the DAO or you voted burn for fight, when we're selecting which solo random player out of the 50 players, if 20 voted, only those 20 get to be included in the random selection to give that to them. If you vote for the other options, you're not included. The same for the DAO. If you vote for another option besides a DAO, you could theoretically be included because, like, let's say you're in a DAO and you don't vote for some reason, but your DAO wins. The problem is there's going to be social pressure there because what if the vote was like came right down? There's like a 1 vote difference. If your DAO has 4 people that didn't vote and you barely won a legend, or let's say you lost a vote by 1 and you didn't vote, do you think your DAO is going to keep you on board because you're not paying attention? Maybe if you're sick or something one time, but if the fights happen and you're not paying attention and you don't vote on the outcome, especially when there's like a long period to vote, it's not like we're saying within 12 hours or 6 hours or 1 hour. Like we'll have something reasonable. It needs to be like within 48 hours, probably, maybe 3 days, maybe. I think that's kind of pushing it, honestly. because you want to, you want people to come pay attention, right? So that's the way it's going to work. Is you have to be voting on these things. You have to vote in line with the outcome. And I think even from a DAO perspective, you could be in a DAO, and if you're causing them to lose votes, dude, they're going to boot you out of the DAO. They're just going to say, no, you can't be included, or they'll exclude you in the rewards, meaning they may not be able to kick you out of the DAO if it's an NFT DAO and you have an NFT staked. Because some DAOs are like invitational DAOs, kind of like they invite you based on your address, and they can vote to kick you out. But if you have an NFT DAO, theoretically, NFT and fungible tokens, maybe some DAOs, if you set it up that way and if you go into it knowing that you could be booted. But in general, those DAOs are like, as long as you have the required token, you can stake. And because they're typically like, they're address based. So even if they were to kick you out, you could just go buy an NFT on another address and come back. And if they didn't know who you were, right, and you staked it, you'd still theoretically be in the DAO. But what they can do is they can affect you from earning on that NFT. So let's say they won the DAO, they won the legend, and they flip it on the secondary market for $500. But the only people they're going to pay are those 20 people that participated. If you have 100 people in the DAO and none of you guys are playing Fight Farm, none of you are buying NFTs, none of you are coming and voting, do they owe you any money? Maybe depending on the terms of the DAO, but most likely they don't owe you nothing. So that's kind of like the idea where we're going with this is there's going to be a social factor. There's going to be some social and political things. Imagine solo players who are there, and yeah, they could vote to award solo randomly to themselves, but they see the voting outcomes are razor thin. They might say vote for a DAO and choose that DAO even though they're not in it, in hopes that that team will say, you know what, Chris voted for us. That address voted for us, and we won by one vote. Let's invite them to the DAO. And now you've recruited, kind of like a clan when you're playing video games online. Those clans and stuff. Like, it's easy to pick up new members. It's easy to boot members, right? And that's kind of like the idea behind Fight Farm is you want it to be a team based game, but there could be some drama. There could be some politicalness. There could be people that get voted in of a DAO or get voted out of a DAO. There could be people that help you win in hopes of being invited to your DAO. And maybe even they promise you, hey, yeah, vote for us. Put in that DAO vote. We're going to invite you, buddy. And then what if they don't? There's a lot of things that could go wrong because, Fight Farm, we can control what happens to the legend when it's in our possession, meaning the original person who risked the legend can't run off with it and not pay you guys if they lost the fight prediction. But once we send that legend over to the DAO address, that's out of our hands. We don't have anything to do with it. So if they screw you, the player, over from whatever their promise was, or whatever your social pact was, or your political pact was, like, that's going to be the drama of the game. And that's kind of like what you see in video games or online games, right? Is sometimes there's some drama and some excitement and some political activity and some social pressure and social activity, because anytime you get like the human element of a team-based game, it adds to the experience. And that's effectively what we want to do with Fight Farm. We want to expand on that and like make it so that you could kind of earn as a community from the perspective of DAO gameplay with Legend gameplay. All right, so one thing I do want to like touch on really quick is balancing new and veteran players. If you think about it like this, kind of like what we talked about earlier, if you've been around since day one or early on and you've got like all 5 required versions to be burned, a new player comes on and gets version 3 and 4. Like, if they've got the money to buy the version 1, 2, and 3, or if it's their favorite fighter, or if they want a legend, or whatever the incentive is for them to do it, they could. But we all know that like not everyone's going to have the money. You want to have a good balance between like gameplay for veterans and long-term players to be rewarded and to have fun, but you don't want it to be so like geared towards the old players and the veteran players that you scare off the new players, right? once again, this is the beauty of choosing a combat sport, a fight sport, karate combat, or choosing like MMA, because as these fighters fight, they have their career span and they retire. How many new players and new fighters are coming? Like, as a new player on Fight Farm, you may not be guaranteed to get your favorite fighter currently, all the versions. If there's previous versions of your favorite fighter right now, you're not going to earn a lot of rewards on that because you've got too many other players that have V1, V2, V3, V4, V5. They've got multiple versions of each. There's stuff stacked against you, right? And what we wanted to do is say, hey, just because you're late, and even if you don't have a lot of money, it doesn't mean you should be scared to not come play. And here's why: take all the people who have previous versions. As you scale up and you're running like NFT for every fighter, for every fight on the entire card, every card of the year, new players are always going to have the option and availability and the ability to start at a V1 for someone. Meaning, if you got 10 fights on a card, maybe 6 out of 10 are all like experienced, seasoned fighters with multiple fights in the game of Fight Farm that have multiple NFTs. But there are going to be some, maybe 2 to 4 of those fights have V1s. And we see this all the time, and I try to highlight that. Like even right now, I don't know who they're going to match up on UFC to fight, um, Dustin Poirier, and the jewel is going to be a V4. But there's going to be a lot of people that if it's a fighter on the opposite side of him, where either they're a new fighter and we just haven't had them, or even if they're an older fighter and we also haven't had them yet, there could be opportunity for someone to come in and start at V1 on that fighter. They might still buy the V4 for Dustin, and if Dustin wins, they'll get a rake of that, of that payout. But that's the cool thing about fighting, man. There's always going to be new fighters. There's always going to be new opportunities, and that's going to be part of the strategy. Is you as the collector, like even now when we're watching new fighters come, we're always watching, we're always vetting, we're always paying attention. We're trying to figure out who's going to be the next star, who's going to be the next Connor, who's going to have like the biggest streak, who's going to be the best ones to bet on. There's so much that goes into it, right? And Fight Farm's going to capture a lot of that. So from a sustainability and fairness perspective, you can always purchase previous fight versions on the secondary marketplace, and you're incentivized to do so. But you're never forced to, and you'll always have other opportunities. The deflationary mechanics, we saw that we expand the supply to scale the game, and then we have burning to decrease the supply, right? To increase that speculative and that collectability value long term. We also have the market dynamics where, we talked about how a certain percentage will be staked and a certain percentage is unstaked. So there's trade-offs to both, right? If you're illiquid, um, because you're staked, you're not going to be able to go to the secondary market and flip it for a profit. But if you're liquid and it's in your wallet and you're not staked, you're not going to be able to earn rewards if that fighter wins, but you'll be able to go to the secondary market and sell with less competition. So there's a lot of market dynamics that we built into this. Community and engagement. We have opportunities for teams to form DAOs to manage legends. There's going to be social and political strategy in voting for lost legends, and community forums around both the collectibles and the game aspect of the NFT collection. Revenue streams. Fight Farm, we earn on every NFT sold. We'll have fees for upgrading your legend NFTs. We'll have fees for playing and risking your legend NFTs. We probably have some NFTs where we create free fighters that we use as rewards to reward you as you watch video content and interact with our community as you lead up to the fight. Those free NFTs are probably going to be something where we might have logos of sponsored ads of our partners. Those could be revenue streams where we have a certain number of advertised advertisement based NFTs that we give out for free that will earn you in the game. And it may be the only way you can get that version is to perform some action. And yes, you're not purchasing it on the marketplace, but you're going to do something and completing a task of engagement for us. And then that's how we would get advertisement dollars in for that. Fees for playing and risking the Legend NFTs, and uh, fees raked from the reward pool payouts. So let's say the rewards pool on any given fight is $1,000. You're probably not going to see the full thousand go to only the players. There's probably going to be like a percentage of every fight pool that goes back to Fight Farm. And then of course merchandise. The license and fighter contributions. This is one thing that I really want to touch on. Was we know that we're going to have to pay licensing fees, whether it's to Karate Combat, eventually, if we can get big enough and do UFC, or if we do PFL or one, or any of the grappling leagues or any of the kickboxing leagues. Like, that's just part of it. But that's also one of those things that can help bring value to you as a brand and help you grow is the licensed, officially licensed product. I'm excited that Karate Combat is probably going to be the first one that we can actually do official licensing on. Um, there is a kickback that we give them for that, and that goes towards their community and their fighters, which is great, right? So it's not even about Karate Combat necessarily trying to make money. They're trying to incentivize people who get that open license to give back to their community and fighters. And I think we're all in agreement that's a wonderful way to use that licensing fee. And even if they were to start to profit off of that in the future, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, that's part of the way this industry works. But I do think they're probably trying to find other, better, newer ways. It'll be fun to see over time what they do with that. For us, though, one thing that Fight Farm wants to do is we want to work with fighters, and we want to incentivize fighters to promote us and to work with us, because what better way to sell NFTs and promote our game than to have the actual support from the fighters that we're using. Now, if we pay Karate Combat that licensing fee, it allows us to use the fighter images, the fighter likeness, the fighter names, the nicknames, the Karate Combat logos. Some fighters in Karate Combat probably don't give a crap about crypto. Some fighters we have seen are gravitating and learning how to utilize crypto. As crypto people and Web3 people, we want to teach them and help them grow and show them the power of what Web3 and NFTs and crypto can do. That's going to be one of my commitments with Fight Farm. And if Karate Combat fighters want to work with us, if the Pit Submission Series grapplers want to work with us, if the IFC Influencer Fight Club, if they want to work with us, we will have fighter official NFT buttons. So while we're allowed to use all of the IP anyways, once you do the licensing fee, that doesn't mean the fighter has to care. They may not care about Fight Farm. They may not care about the NFTs that are out now. They may not care about Web3 or crypto. They're like, dude, I'm a fighter. Get out of here with all that Bitcoin stuff. They just don't care, right? But the ones who do, even if there's a pool of the 20% and then half of that is going to the fighters, what better way for us to do something great for fighters than to put them in saying, hey bro, if you like wear this Fight Farm logo, this In the Pit logo on your rash guard or on your walkout t-shirt, or if you have like the patch on your shorts, or if you get on your YouTube and your Twitter and you promote us, like, we're going to pay you out of every NFT of yours that we sell. So as you promote us and as you promote your own NFTs, you're going to get a cut of that, right? Now, another thing that we'll do is the royalties. We know how royalties and NFTs work, right? And because we're expecting to have a very active secondary market based on the supply demand uh, to upgrade and have the legend gameplays, the legend upgrades, the secondary marketplace royalties, we're going to make sure that if you're a fighter official fighter and we put that little logo, and what I mean by that, I'll actually go over here and show you what I mean. So this was like the test that we did, and you see like regular NFTs. and they don't have, and these were like all the test NFTs early on, right? So they have like the fighter's name, or sorry, the nickname, the logos, which karate combat it was, the version number. But these were like our test NFTs. Now, when we first tried the Influencer Fight Club IFC, we had Postmaster and Heck. And when I was talking to Postmaster and Heck both, they liked the idea. They understood where I'm going, where I'm coming from. Uh, but we put Fighter Official on there. Why? Because for every NFT that we sold for Postmaster or Heck, they could claim a cut of that NFT. So maybe the ground floor is $5 on these basic versions, but if we have a fighter official version, maybe it's $7. And for every NFT we sell, they get $2 out of that, right? Um, Plus, they get included for the royalties for the entire collection. So that means now they're not just earning on their NFT sales, they're earning every time a secondary market sale happens and a royalty gets paid out. And of course, that's going to be split by a growing number of individuals. But as the game scales, as those secondary market sales scale, um, that could be a nice little revenue stream just on the royalties. So that's kind of the idea is like you want to chase karate combat fighters, pit submission series fighters, the influencer fight club, anyone who's on karate combat, if they want to work with us and help us grow. And of course, just so you know, those are not very good looking NFTs. Those are like we were really having a trouble with our AI when we first started testing. All the graphics came out super duper messy. But you can see here these ones that we just did. Now we didn't sell these. If you watched when we were doing the lead in for our first OmniFlix TV live stream for Karate Combat, this last event, we wanted to give away some NFTs, but I didn't want to sell them and I didn't want to use Karate Combat logos. I need to get the licensing and the paperwork filled out first. But man, the product turned out a lot better. So I didn't use their names or nicknames. I used the hunter and the crown. Um, Even the pit in the background, I made sure this wasn't the actual Karate Combat logo. I had to I had to use like the eraser because the AI actually copied the actual logo and made it look cool. But anyways, my point is like as we work with these fighters, it would be really cool to have someone like Rend or uh, a high level champion fighter say, you know what, I want to promote Fight Farm in the pit. I want to earn on every NFT. And I said the minimum is like $5 and maybe it's $7. But maybe for a champion like Rend, maybe those basic versions can go for much higher. The market and the demand, because he might say, hey man, if you want me to put fighter official on this, I want $5 NFT, bro. Guess what? I'm going to price them at 10 and we're going to see how many will sell. Why? Because the less you sell, the less for that version, it's actually better from a collectability and a reward splitting process. Now, does that price some people out if they're used to paying $3 or $5 for an NFT? Or they're going to come in and say, "Well, these are $10," or how come Screevers he gets paid, his is fighter official, but his is $7, and the crown is for Rend is $10." Well, because Rend has the belt, he calls the shots. If he's working with us and he says, yeah, I'll do it. I'll play ball with you. I'll mention you X amount of times on Twitter. I'll do this. I'll put this on whatever the deal is you work out, right? That's the power of Web3 is we could come in and really start to form partnerships with the fighters and pay them directly from the NFT sales and give them royalties. There could even be a way for us to somehow figure out, like, hey, the pot is say $1,000. We're going to take 100 of that thousand and scoot it over to you. You could do stuff like that, right? Because if the pot is increasing because your sales are increasing because you have the fighters working with you and they're promoting, it doesn't. I don't think it's going to hurt the players or do anything bad for growth to lessen the pot. If you have $1,000 pot and you less it by 100, so you can give that fighter 100, I don't think players are going to complain about that. They're going to be like, dude, yeah, I'll take 900. Make sure he gets paid. Why? Because they still, because then you're going to start to form these relationships between the fighter and the players, right? Um, what's his name? Let me find him real quick. So, there's been a ton of fighters that probably don't care about Web3, but if you pay attention to the fighters that do, and you look at the ones who understand this, these are the kind of fighters that I'm like salivating over for Fight Farm. Because when you look, this dude has his own collection. He's the champ. Very popular. He was just a UFC. We just saw Fubar uh, with this dude, and he was at the UFC and he was with the V Chain guys. We just saw him win a fight. We just saw him. He has his own NFT collection. Um, man, popular fighter, super exciting. He's one of those people like we heard Apollo, like you see right here, uh, King Apollo. We heard King Apollo talking about how like some of these dudes are like latching on to Web3. Dude, I want Fight Farm in the pit to be one of these collections where just like the fighters want to latch onto it. The fighters are fired up about it. They're excited about it. They aren't just looking at it and saying, well, I got my NFT here and I don't know what to do. Because if you look at his NFTs, like I think it was 15 or 16, and I think these NFTs were like 30-ish or more dollars. I did buy one of his NFTs recently because I heard they were doing some special utilities and airdrops. And yeah, man, great fighter. But when you start to get the fighters excited and fired up, and they're starting to utilize NFTs to reward their followers, to reward their fans, to reward their communities, I think NFTs should also be used to reward them. They put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of work ethic. There's a lot of sacrifice. And dude, when you're a starving fighter, it's hard to get money, bro. So, guys, I'm going to start to wrap this up because I'm going on 2 hours and I need to eat and go hang out with my wife and have a good Friday night. And it's going on 7:35 Eastern Standard Time. So, in conclusion, we are going to be looking at promoting Fight Farm over on Karate Combat. We're still going to have our MMA game. I'm excited because we should be able to get licensing on Fighter on Karate Combat. I don't know if the community is going to care about us. Like we're on Omniflix, we're not on Hedera. I mean, I'm not opposed to maybe one day launching something over on Hedera or launching something on Up whenever whenever the new blockchain layer launches. I mean, there's so many possibilities, but I'm just going to say this. We have a great strategy for Fight Farm. We have a great blockchain. Even like though Omniflix doesn't get the love that it should, they're growing. They're getting noticed. They're Omniflix TV platform, and they're really pushing themselves as a multimedia hub more so than just an NFT platform, which I like. I like that we just did the Karate Combat live streams. I'll continue to do that. Um, but their marketplace, we need people, right? And I don't know how many people are going to be willing to come from Hedera over to um, Omniflix. Maybe it may be something though where we have to look at launching a version of In the Pit on Hedera or on a different blockchain on Up. So the biggest challenges there is if you look at how the OmniFlix Studio is, how we mint, because we do mint on demand, and you want to mint different NFTs at different times, not all at once, and you want them to go to the same collection contract address. That's not your typical setup for most NFTs because most NFTs is here's a collection address here's the 10,000 NFTs or the 5,000 or the 2,000 they mint until they mint out, or they mint until they stop the mint and it goes to secondary. We don't run like that. And the only reason that we're able to perform and do what we're doing now is because we have a GUI based uh, studio that has drop down menus and all the stuff we need, from collection creation and collection management to royalties to minting the NFTs to uploading your media for the NFTs. It's all in a nice studio. And dude, I've looked around. There's plenty of people saying that they're going to have like code free GUI based studios. And I've tried a couple of them. I've tried them on multiple blockchains and multiple ecosystems. None of them do what OmniFlix does. Period. None of them. None of them have reached the level that OmniFlix is doing it. That doesn't mean that they won't, and it doesn't mean that they can't. But I'm just telling you, people ask me all the time, like, dude, you could go to Stargaze and Cosmos. You could go here. You could go there. You could come to Solana. You could go to an Ethereum layer 2. You could go to Polygon. You could go to Base. Everyone's always like, Chris, you would do so much better if you just moved blockchains. And my response to them is always the same. I couldn't move to chase the volume and the money and chase the larger collector crowd, even if I wanted to, because they don't offer me the tool set that I need to run Fight Farm in the way that it's currently or even could be run in the future, so that you can mint on demand, you can burn on demand, you can mint multiple different fighters on the same fight card. Because even if you're minting, let's say you have Karate Combat and there's 10 fights, you got 20 fighters between those 10 fights. Now, how many fights in the last Karate Combat changed within the last 2 days of the fight? Like two of them, I think. I know Aline Perea, her opponent changed, and I feel like maybe one of the dudes on the lower end of the card changed. We just saw the between 24 hours on the last UFC 211, the main event changed. I have to have the flexibility to come in and not only mint two different fighters for 10 different fights, the from 4 weeks out to a week out, depending on when the fights are announced and how much time we have. I need to be able to do that, right? And even if you get to where you can automate some of this stuff and do things, I have to be able to come in so that when a fighter drops out within a 24 to 40 hour notice, a 72 hour, the week of the fight, I have to come in and be like, well, that fighter B sold 50 NFTs. I've got to mint 50 of the new fighter and airdrop them to those people because they paid the money for this fight, and now the fighters changed. I mean, I could say no, never mind. Now, if both fighters change, usually we scrap the fight. But if a single fighter changes and the other fighter stays, usually we airdrop that. So you kind of got a 2 for 1. I think that's good for the players. It's good for treating them right. And these are the kind of things, this is the kind of flexibility that I've gotten in the OmniFlix studio that I truly haven't seen everywhere else. And I've tried it. So even if I were to think about, like, because Karate Combat is such a Hedera based eco, and I love Hedera, man. I've learned a lot. Postmaster and those guys, their community is great. I didn't know a lot about Hedera Hashgraph, and slowly over the last 2 or 3 months, I've started to learn. Right, I've really enjoyed, but I don't know the last thing about minting an NFT collection over on Hedera. And even if they could just say, well, we'll show you, it's easy, come over here and mint the NFT, it doesn't mean that the way the contracts and the collections and the marketplace, I would really have to go do some research and see, like, is it even possible with the current setup? Because I've had this problem even in Cosmos. I can't go to Stargaze. I can't go here. I talked to some people on Neutron about their new one, and they have a no code studio launching. And I know in Nibiru they had a no code one that existed that was a multi-chain NFT marketplace. I've went and I've tried these ones. I've tried the ones on ETH layer twos. I've tried the ones on Solana. I've tried the ones on Near. I went and looked. I've yet to find something that gives me the flexibility of what OmniFlix has given me, and that's the number one reason that we've stayed. The team ships, the team delivers, and they've done a great job. Now, Fight Farm as a whole has always claimed and meant to be that we're not going to be OmniFlix only. They know that. We know that. I don't think they want us to be. We're all in the Cosmos ecosystem. We're multi-chain, IBC, cross-chain, from the tokens now to the NFTs. We have ICS 721. Pretty soon, you're going to start to see, even in Cosmos, a lot of our Fight Farm based token NFTs are going to start to be on Stargaze or the Hub with Cosmos or over on Neutron or over on Nibiru. Anywhere that we can move them cross chain and set up a secondary market and sell our NFTs and set up a DAO on their chain, which is effectively like almost all the major Cosmos chains. We could do Neutron and Stargaze probably within the next 3 months. I know that we're going to have like Stargaze coming up, and unless they move to the hub, we see what they're doing over on the hub right now with multi-chain, cross-chain Arc dropping these NFTs in the next this weekend. So you know what's coming. We're already there. The next step after we expand out into Cosmos is getting on Solana, getting on Hedera, getting on ETH layer twos. And the cool thing about IBC and bridges is that you theoretically could still create all these NFTs right here with the flexibility that we have on OmniFlix Studio and then move them over to the different chains, secondary markets to sell them leading into a fight. And next thing you know, like Fight Farm is really a multi-chain, multi-ecosystem collection. So, guys, 2 hours and 7 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for the time today. I'm going to end this stream, and I wanted to officially create this video so I could start to send it out as I'm talking to these teams, as I'm pitching them, as I'm trying to explain Fight Farm to them. I wanted to have a good video walkthrough that kind of explains some of the nuances and the details. If you ever have questions, feel free to message me. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. It's at Fight Farm NFT. Definitely make sure you give me a like, a thumbs up, a share, and we will see you next time. Karate Combat KC53 is coming soon. We got some UFC, I think two. You have one this weekend, then you have one for 212 coming on the 8th.